No, I said we had a wager up there what your last name was, and now I won.
Oh, 1 minute. Thank you. I was wondering if you had any extras. That's a head-on collision.
Yeah, he's a journeyman coach in his car.
But he's coming here?
Yeah.
I just wanted to point him out to me because I don't even know them.
Oh, yeah, I feel, yeah.
I've never seen, I don't, if I've
They
seen
can
him, I
sit here
wouldn't
in
know.
these tables.
That's where we're gonna have people coming up.
They're gonna come to the podium.
Oh, okay.
Right, media can sit at the table. Sure.
Say you were.
Really gonna want to sit here in time anyway.
Keep working on it, keep working on it. Just give them your confidence. That's the least.
When we had the meeting at the city center up in Utah, these are four.
Yep, they're the petitions, signatures. I'm gonna start my thing.
I'm sure she'll want to talk to you later as well.
Tiny.
This will be good.
You want me to put your phone list?
I'm gonna make copies of those for my file. All of the lists that you have of attorneys.
I won't leave you without,
At least get me a copy.
at least seeing everything. I'll stop at your office and you'll have me.
Yeah, I don't have copies.
You want this back?
No, I have that. If the other board members want that, I'll make copies. I didn't have time. But just the sign-in sheets.
So if they're not on here.
That's what you're talking about, this sign.
Yeah, I want those back when you're done, so I can have it on record. I have the record already.
Didn't turn out real good. Because of the one call. Also.
Okay, and a blue shirt. Okay.
Yeah. No, he's just.
You're gonna be secret, huh? Better put your mic on.
It's now 1:30, we're gonna call our meeting to order, please.
Mic.
I need to always do that, and I'm gonna remind everybody else too, so, okay. First order of business is to approve our agenda. Is there any changes or corrections to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move this be approved as we received it.
We have a motion to accept the agenda as it's been presented. Do I have a second?
Second that.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Merlin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Dwayne?
Aye.
Wayne?
I'll vote aye.
Dwight?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passed. Okay, first thing I want to make a couple announcements. Please be aware, if the situation would arrive, you can also use this door and both doors for fire exits. I also ask everybody to check their phones and make sure that they're turned off. Thus far to date, and I might have a couple numbers incorrect, but they're very close. We've received about 59 petitions. And we have a list of them with all their names and addresses that we've prepared thus far. We received a letter from Wind Industry, and Charles Wittenberg emailed in, and we received about 500 letters for the moratorium thus far. Anything that, in this area we just received today, the letters, anything we received today, I want you guys to know is going to be acknowledged and recorded. We'll keep track of all of it. Okay, today is a chance for everybody to voice their opinions and to be heard. And I ask that everybody please respect the speaker. Only one person talking at a time. The person who wants to speak needs to be recognized by myself and to come up to the podium. And please speak as close to the microphone as you can so that we get a good recording. You must identify yourself. You have to be recognized by myself to speak. Identify yourself and give me your address, or give us the address. Try to limit your speaking. There might be a lot of speakers today, so we have to be cognizant that other people want to talk so we can walk our way through this. We're going to begin with the petitioners and the opponents first, followed by the proponents. And once each group finishes, they will not have opportunity to represent themselves. It'll be a done deal there. That is all I have for now. So the meeting is now open for public comment.
You got your list?
I do have a list. It's not real clean. First, we have the petitioners and opponents. Who would like to speak first? I do have a list of, and I'm trying to, there's no numbers on it. It just says for or against. So, who would like to speak first? Anybody offering? No one of the petitioners or opponents of the moratorium that wishes to speak?
I'll speak first, then.
Please come up to the podium and give me your name and address. To be recognized, all you gotta do is go like that, okay? Otherwise, I'm looking around and I'll miss you. Thank you. And for record again, full name and address.
Full name is Roy Rosh. Address is 145, County 27 North, Hazen, North Dakota.
Okay, got it.
Got that?
I got her. Thank you, sir.
I'm here as a landowner, wondering what's going on with our landowner rights. Is this moratorium for you guys to get more information, or a way to kill wind in Mercer County? And I would like to know, because it's kind of ironic that GRE made an announcement to close, and the next day, you guys had a moratorium in effect on wind. And this is not a new wind farm. This has been in play for 10 years. They were at the position to move ahead, and all of a sudden, we're now being told, nope, you can't do that. And I feel like as a landowner, we're being told that we don't matter. We're being marginalized. That because there's 59 landowners and 500 letters, well, they matter more than us. well, I'm not gonna be bullied. Coal does not get to run over us. And this comes into play because this wind farm is right next to a coal mine. Matter of fact, there's many landowners, including myself, that have been approached by the coal mine. And we chose the wind farm. It's not that I'm pro-wind or against coal. I had to make a decision that was best for me, my family. The only way I can say it was a shit sandwich. Had to take a bite. So we made the decision, and now you're telling us we can't make that decision. And the ramifications of this on landowner rights is, in my opinion, immense. And this is happening because of GRE. We didn't say we wanted it closed. They made the decision. And a company came to us, your land will support this wind. If some person in Minnesota wants to buy wind power from this, that's their decision. If they want to pay more for power, that's on them. I have to make the decision if I want to look at them or not. This company came to us, Capital Power. They offered us a lease. We negotiated. They did not. I'll see on other social media, there was no coercion, there was no pushing. Let me tell you, between dealing with Capital Power or North American Coal, it was a lot easier to deal with Capital Power. So that's why we chose to sign this lease, and that's why we want to see this project move forward. I had asked Bob Evans one time, out of all the landowners that they had or wanted to or did approach, they had 85% participation rate. If I got all the landowners in Mercer County together, I couldn't get 85% of them to agree the sky is blue. Okay? That you don't understand that. That's pretty big. I understand that this is a tough deal. Coal provides a lot of jobs. But the deal here is not to get rid of coal. We're turning this into an us versus them, and that's wrong. What is it going to change if this moratorium sticks? There is no wind farm. Are we changing coal's outlook at all? Is what's going to happen going to happen? If they build the wind farm, is that going to change what happens to coal? I don't think it does. Why can you only have one or the other? Why can't you have both? This is a steady source of income for my family. This ensures my ranch and farm survives. So why are we turning that into that? That's wrong. We want both to survive. We can supply all the power. But the customer is demanding different power than coal. Now we can sit and argue if that's wrong or right. We can do that all day long. But sometimes in America, the customer is always right, even when he is wrong. And we have to understand, North Dakota, most of our power is generated for a customer. It's no different than I raise crops or cattle for a customer. And if their tastes change, either I got to make a better product or I have to change my product. You can't sit and stick your head in the sand and hope it gets better. You have to do something. You have to be willing to change. Our county is broke. Our taxes, my taxes, since 2015 have went up almost 70%. And now you're telling me that this company is going to come in, pay me as a landowner, generate revenue, and we're going to turn that down? And then we'll hear in the budget meetings that the coal severance taxes went down. So where are you guys going to get that money? You're going to come to me. And now we have a way to change that. Now, we have to understand that we need the revenue. Now, when you get into it, yes, you'll hear, I've seen social media, I'll kind of repeating myself, that they're ugly, they're blinking lights. We live north of Hazen. There's a coal mine out there. The reason people don't realize it is it hides behind 32,000 acres and has closed off every road around me. Roads we used to be able to travel don't exist anymore. They're gone. And if you think you can't deal with a few wind towers, but yet you want to be able to place a coal mine within 500 feet of my house, that's okay. I think some people here will tell you that we don't want to look at them, but then they want to drive to a job that makes me deal with blasting that rattles my windows. I think we can all get along here. I think this is a good deal. I think this is a good company. This company is not jumping around looking. They want to build this, they want to run it, and then when it's time for it to go, they want to decommission it. Now, of course, they can lie to us, but that's, everybody can. So we got to make some decisions here, and I think we can generate some revenue. We can all get along here. Thank you for consideration.
Thanks, Roy. We have several more on our list for opponents. Anybody else would like to speak? Go ahead, young lady.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak for my brotherhood and sisterhood, which belongs to the laborers 563 of North Dakota. And my name is Rosario Baker, and my husband and I are proud members of the 563 North Dakota Union. We have worked hard in our career and proud of our accomplishments. And we are also proud Mercer County residents and have worked many hours with our union in central North Dakota. Several of our hours with our union had been in the coal mine, 5 plants. Both of us are worried about of all the news about closing the coal mines and plants. Stanton Station is gone, and Heskett and Coal Creek will both be closed soon. These closings are really scary to all of us. At this stage in our career, we do not want to consider traveling outside North Dakota to work because of our family. We don't want to be separated with our family. And we also do not want that for our fellow union members, many more live in Mercer County. Building wind farms are another area my union exceeded all through the U.S. We have done it in these states as well and want to continue to have that chance. On behalf of my family and my brotherhood and sisterhood in the union, on this issue, we can have future working opportunities right in our home county and home states. And I thank you very much. I hope you're considering, not to get rid of the coal plants, which we worked really hard for so long, and we want to continue working for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosario.
Thank you.
Okay. We're speaking at opponents to moratorium, correct?
No, opposing.
Opponents, yes, opponents.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
First of all, I'd like to hand out a letter from my union.
Where are you from? What's your name, please?
My name is Steve Cortina with Laborers International Union of North America.
Okay.
My address is 2210 East Broadway Avenue, Bismarck, North Dakota, 58501.
Cortina. Thank you.
Thank you.
like to start off first by saying, I've been a proud union member of Local 563 North Dakota for many years, since 2007. I started my career in wind towers. I helped build the Tatanka wind towers down by Ashley, Ellendale area. From then, I started to travel around the state. I really wish I could have stayed here in the state because I exceeded from just a regular labor way up to a general foreman to train and to help build these wind towers around the country. This state, I would have to say that with coal soon to be gone, probably be gone, that we need other renewable energy here in the States. We don't want that to be taken away from us. The union I belong to build wind towers all around the country. We want to make sure that we stay here in the States. Our local jobs here, for our local workers here. My current role here with LAUNA, Labor International Union of North America, is to promote and to fight for our local workers here. I've been around this state right here looking at wind towers, other companies, other construction sites, and seeing how many local workers we have on that job right there. For my research, it's under 20%. That means there's a lot of our local workers here that's not getting those jobs. You'll see them Texas plates, those Tennessee plates, those Georgia plates. We want to make sure this work right here stays here in this state right here. LAUNA, we're not against coal at all. It's been our bread and butter for decades. Our members been in these plants, build their careers around their plants, retire from these plants right here, and earn a great living right here next to home right here. We're really worried about our landscape here. Next 10 years, are we just gonna not build anything in this land right here? Are we going to help promote our landscape here for renewable energy? Yes, we should. Like my shirt says here, these local jobs here for local workers. I fight for that around the states. I will continue fighting for that around the states. Behind me, there are laborers that work in these coal plants. They want to make sure they can continue work here. You take away that from them, people are going to leave the states. They're going to leave the states, and they're going to put that money, that economic in somebody else's state. We want it to stay here. So what I'm doing is asking the commissioners to reconsider. This is my moratorium. We are all above energy union. We also want to be the forefront of these wind towers, these wind farms, these solar. We want to make sure that we get this work right here. Our local workers get this work. We have excellent training here around the states. Also, my unit is part of Minnesota also, so we have between 300 and 400 laborers just right here in the state. Including Minnesota, we have over 11,000 members. So we have the skill, we have the training, along with some other crafts also to do these projects right here. So we have the skilled labor to do these projects here. And I just want to make sure that these towers that go up, that will go up, that perhaps you would oppose this right here. We just want to make sure that we get the work here, make sure it stays there so we can keep the money here. Support our families here. So when we have to travel out of state, I've traveled out of state, it was hard on my family. But when I came back, I said, you know what? Let me fight for something I believe in. And that's what I believe in. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is Travis Mcdermott. I work for Capital Power. I run the Russo Wind Park. It's in Russo, North Dakota. It's called New Frontier Wind Park. My address is 712 Abbey Avenue, Surrey, North Dakota, 58785.
I'm sorry, which project did you say you work with?
I run the New Frontier Wind Project.
Thank you.
It's better. I'd like to enter this letter into the record here. It's from George and Pam Nygaard. It's to the county commissioners. We, the undersigned, would like to express our opinion on any proposed moratorium regarding the development of the Garrison Butte Wind Energy Project. We have real estate in the area and would like to benefit from the resources that will be affected by your decision. Natural gas is replacing coal as a fuel due to cost and cleaner burning. Coal as a job provider in Mercer County is probably not going to be available in the future. Wind power has the potential to provide jobs and tax dollars into the future. We have been disappointed that no opportunity was given to us to express our opinion prior to a moratorium being introduced by the county commissioners in May. We urge to allow this project to go forward without delay. Fine. How do I give this into the record?
Thank you.
It was raining. I also have another letter drafted by Bob Evans. I've been asked to read the following statement on behalf of Bob Evans and Capital Power. Bob was unable to travel here today due to COVID-19 travel restrictions that our company has upon us. Unfortunately, the opportunity to call into this meeting was also not available. Good afternoon, everybody. As the project lead for the Garrison Butte Wind Project, which is located in Mercer County, I appreciate the opportunity to have my statement read to the county commissioners at this separate hearing on the moratorium resolution. I would like to register our opposition to the moratorium resolution and respectfully ask the commissioners to rescind it. Capital Power is an above all energy company with a history that goes back over 100 years. We generate power from coal, gas, solid fuel, solar, and wind. We are not here to kill coal. The Garrison Butte project would be our 6th wind project facility in the United States. In all of our wind projects, we work closely with landowners in rural areas who are looking to diversify their existence, agriculturally operations by developing a natural resource available on their land. We've heard from many of the project landowners that the revenue from wind energy often provides the extra financial lift that supports farming or ranching as a viable long-term enterprise. Wind energy essentially allows for an additional harvest from the land, a harvest that is substantial and provides steady revenues to families for decades. It's our intention to offer the same opportunity to landowners involved in the Garrison Butte Wind Project. However, the proposed moratorium resolution with its 2-year pause on accepting permit application threatens this opportunity. We have worked closely with Mercer County landowners for the last 6 years as we completed the environmental surveys, site analysis, and design work needed to get the Garrison Butte project to where it is today. There are many factors that must line up for the wind project to be viable. These conditions have recently begun lining up, allowing us to move Garrison Butte into the final development phase. One of those factors, access to transmission, opened up for us in the last few months. We will lose the opportunity to connect to the project to the large grid if we cannot get our county permit in the near term. Capital Power is a company with long history of coal-fired power generation experience. As such, we are also subject to the force and pressures that are reshaping the North American power system. While we emphasize with those whose jobs are at risk, stopping the Garrison Butte project will not change the current situation. However, what the moratorium resolution will do is put much-needed economic stimulus at risk. Revenue to landowners will be lost. Decades of new taxes to this county will disappear, and jobs created during the construction will never materialize. Yes, Capital Power does have an economic interest in seeing this project move forward, but so do Mercer County landowners and their families, and we would support their right to benefit from their land to the fullest extent. The landowners involved in this project have been waiting a long time to see this opportunity materialize and to receive a vital source of income that isn't dependent on rain or good market prices. It would be a great loss if this opportunity, an opportunity already afforded to others in the county, disappears. Again, I would respectfully request the county commissioner to rescind the moratorium resolution. Thank you for your time.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yes,
Did I
ma'am.
hear you say that you're working on getting the agreements for the transmission? Did you mention that there?
That was mentioned in the letter, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and does the moratorium affect progress in those negotiations?
I cannot answer that question 100%.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
Any other opponents that would like to express their opinions? Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to give us Bob's letter too? Yes, ma'am. Okay, yeah.
My name is Gary Scheid, and I'm a retired farmer, 18 5th Street Northwest in Hazen. I farmed that high ground north of Hazen, and I cussed that frickin' wind for 50 years up north. So, this is an opportunity to maybe cash in a little bit on that wind. I guess I was shocked that the commissioners put a moratorium on it with just cold turkey like that. I am surprised that you would not even consider it, because I would think that you would want to diversify your tax base, because the way they are, Great River Energy has shut down one coal plant and they're talking about shutting down another one. All we need to do is have Basin decide to do the same, and Mercer County could be in great trouble. And if that happens, Mercer County is going to be in trouble. Do you think that the landowners can you raise the taxes enough so that you can support this county? I think that's something you folks have to consider, because I think we need the dollars in tax base wherever you can find it, and I think this is an opportunity for a few dollars in taxes, bring a few jobs to town, maybe not very many, but you know, every home in town is some extra dollars. I wish you guys would consider that. I'm not opposed to coal, but you know what's going on the last few years. Please consider that. I think things are changing between wind and natural gas and coal. So take a look at that when you make those decisions. Would you please do that?
We will, sir. Thank you. Mr. Stroh.
My name is Charles Stroup. My address is, you want a P.O. Box or street?
All we need is your city, please.
13 3rd Street Northeast in Hazen. I'm here today on behalf of, actually I'm going to be wearing two hats. My first hat is as a land agent for Eloise McKig. Mrs. McKig is 96 years old, and our family has had the opportunity to be the agent for Mrs. McKig for, well, she's 96 years old, and she has, the land is in a trust. It's 3/4 that are up there that have been leased that I'm speaking of. And I have a letter from Susie McKig, which is her daughter, who is now the trustee of the land that the McKigs own in the area north of Hazen. And I'll give that I got copies for you, and I'll just give them to the secretary when I'm done speaking.
Thank you. It'll work fine.
Yes. So anyway, she speaks for herself, and it's, you as a commission may care to read what she's written, and I'd be recovering other ground or similar topics that, or the subjects that have already been covered. She probably has a little bit something new. She's probably the only landowner in here today that's representing somebody that's 96 years old, and they've had their land in Mercer County all that time. My other hat that I wanted to wear or speak of today has to do with me as a citizen of Hazen and citizen of Mercer County. I find it interesting that my grandpa, Robert Straub, moved to Zap in, I suppose, 1913 or 14, about the time Zap was being created. And my grandfather was a stockholder in the Lucky Strike mine in Zap. So the lineage, well, I don't have a hard hat, and no, do I know anything about coal, but it's been part of my life as well. I also remember as a youngster working at the Hazen Lumber Yard that I had the opportunity to put up 2x12s and lay down molite block for the ribbon cutting at the first power plant here next to Stanton. And it goes back then through my life as the opportunity to talk about development. As a banker, I certainly have appreciated and realized and seen the things that have happened in Mercer County that have been wonderful for us, beneficial for us. Our communities have doubled and tripled in population. We've had great jobs and opportunities that many young people didn't have, is to come back and live and stay in the communities that we grew up in. I've been also fortunate to spend time under the topic of economic development. And the matter today rubs up or is similar or has a shadow of the same situation that I experienced back in the 1988. I think that was the day. I think it was August. And we got a call from I'm not sure who it was, is DGC is closing. And as you all know, the assets of a bank are the loans that have been made to the people who have borrowed the money. It was a very sobering moment when we began to count up and look at all the jobs that we would be out of in Mercer County if DGC closed. Matter of fact, it even got so terrible that we got to the point to saying, well, what were the leaders of Hazen going to do if the gas plant closed? And we went so far as to say, what will Hazen look like after the gas plant closes? Were we to put a cyclone fence around North Star 1 and 2 and tell everybody else that was living there to move into the old town? Simply that we would have more of a cohesive picture of what our future was going to be. Later on after that, and we certainly are grateful for what that DGC was taking over and we have it today, I remain very faithful and devoted to the fact that the coal energy counties here have been blessed us and the citizens for many years. I'm an advocate of coal. I'm an advocate for our coal miners' jobs. I'm grateful that they have brought the kind of life that we've enjoyed today. It was then later in 1997, excuse me, but anyway, as time went on, okay? I was asked to be part of a group of concerned citizens in North Dakota about the future of North Dakota. It was called Vision 2000, and this was a group of about 30 people who looked at the future of North Dakota. And our purpose of that was to consider what is the future of communities and how can communities deal with some of the strife that they were living in, where the growth of the community wasn't particularly good and the diversity of the income wasn't probably very mixed, or opportunities weren't there. We were talking about people leaving, young people not returning to North Dakota. And that led then for the opportunity to help draft legislation. It was called Growing North Dakota. All I'm getting to here is about planning. and strategically thinking, and what we have to do and will have done in order to deal with situations like we may have here today at this meeting. Is there a solution? I prepared a resolution, and it's written as if you, the board, have written that resolution, and I'll give it to the secretary, and you could read it later on if you wish. But I think there is a solution that will mitigate the issues that I perceive are here in terms of we're going to lose coal miners' jobs if we have wind farms. And the resolution addresses that in a way that enables both sides to win. Now, I must admit, I may be all wrong. It may not be the threat of jobs by coal miners, but that's my perception as it is today. It seems to me, and you've heard it and we've all heard it, whether or not, and at least I believe it, that the risk of the price of natural gas is what's going to beat the crap out of coal, or the environment's going to beat the crap out of coal, or I think more positively, I hope we can sequester CO2 and have coal for many hundreds of years to come. But we don't know. And the moratorium seemed like a quick decision to stop the enabling of progress of thinking and strategically thinking as to what is the future of Mercer County. What should we be doing? And I think the county commissioners are in a position to lead not only the state, but certainly the other municipalities and the school districts and the park boards as to what are we doing beyond wind? What is our future going to be? And that by having the moratorium, you seem to cut off very quickly the opportunity to converse about the future. And this petition says, if you would, please consider defeating the moratorium, but please don't stop thinking and talking about the near term of what is in the best interest of our county. School districts and cities, park boards all need to know and see who's going to lead where we go. And it is about, and this gives us that chance to do that. Anyway, I'll conclude by saying, please be visionary, be bold. We'll be willing to take some risks. You may not make all the decisions perfect, but we recognize your leadership and look to it to help us all improve life here in Mercer County. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Absolutely. Yes, young lady. I was giving him a chance to step back before you start talking. All right, go ahead, proceed, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Pamela Trollick, and of course, as you can see, I'm part of the Orange Brigade. That's what we get called by the PSC, by legislators, because we show up in our orange. I wasn't sure if I was going to speak, but I listened to all of the different things that are being said. What I just heard out of Chuck was balance. What I heard out of Roy was landowner rights. You know, to listen to my co-union members, Rosario and her husband and many other family members that want to work in coal, but they want other opportunities. Mr. Cortina, who built his whole career on the wind industry and understands it and follows it and fights for it. You know, he talked, and even Capital Power talked about the all of the above strategy. The Labor's International Union of North America, we have roughly 580,000 members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. And we have always been strongly about all of the above. And when we talk about balance in North Dakota, we have every single source here. I mean, we've had the hydro production for years. We've had coal production going back. You know, I have former family in Mercer County that talk about hand digging lignite decades and decades ago. I lived in Mclean County for years. So, and actually for most everybody in my life, they know coal literally is my background. I grew up in Bowman County, Gascoigne Mine. When Gascoigne closed, I watched people I had grown up with, families I had grown up with, scatter. But they moved into other industries. There were different things that they created. I actually worked for GRE at Coal Creek Station for 7.5 years. I played another odd hat because Ladd Erickson is standing here. I was sadly and unfortunately only a one-term county commissioner over in Mclean County. Ladd was probably happy about that. But during that time, we wrote the first zoning ordinance for a wind farm because at the time there had been talks of a wind farm. And the commission over there was not against it. I actually remember being excited about having that mix in the county, you know, playing a role as a commissioner, which I did for that term. I actually just moved away from Washburn 18, 20 months ago. And to hear that Coal Creek is closing is just a shock. But to know that GRE had planned to come into McLean County with several projects that would have been multi-million. One of them is they were looking at doing 800 megawatts of wind in the county. Ladd, sorry, I was shocked by what McLean County did, and we did. I mean, I wrote a letter to him and the commissioners, you know, what's happening to stop progress when there can be balance in a county. And we were just as shocked with Mercer County writing the moratorium because we had members calling, going, what is happening? You know, if we lose coal, we lose wind. If we lose wind, what else are we going to lose in this state? We are just starting to see a foray in North Dakota with solar farms. The first solar farm, it's going to be major. It's 200 megawatts going to be built north of Castleton. It was announced, it's a bit on hold right now, but we track that. We track every wind project. And even though that's the first, Basin has announced recently they have 3 projects outside of the state of North Dakota that they're investing in to diversify. And at one point, or one of these companies, I mean, they're all looking at diversification. Right before, I want to say it was in February, right before everything went on lockdown, Mr. Cortina and I had actually gone to the interim legislative hearing for energy transmission and development, where all of the power companies that produce and distribute in the state of North Dakota, you know, sat down and laid out, you know, what their plan was. And all of them talked the same story: diversification of power production, balance in power production, every one of them. In my role with the Laborers Union, here in North Dakota, I am the Director of Governmental Affairs and New Business Development. I'm, you know, someone used to say to me, what's lower than a lawyer? A lobbyist. Right here, I'm registered. But part of mine is to talk about work, to talk about our union, to talk about, and we do, you know, they've got those local jobs and local hire. And it really, truly is. We are working so hard as a union to keep jobs in this state, to keep workers here. We've spent time even fighting for non-union workers in this state and had incredible results. And we want to keep this going. You know, we look at kind of, there's just a whole storm going on, I mean, in the world with the pandemic and what happened to oil. No one could have imagined what would have happened to oil when it was in negative prices, and how with announcements with coal, with announcements with oil, how that is impacting. I just sat through listening through government finance, you know, as to what's happened. And so we are asking as a union for you to really, truly reconsider this for workers, to really, truly reconsider this for landowners, for landowner rights, for tax base, like Chuck said. And we would really appreciate if you would just come back to the drawing board and reconsider your original decision. Thank you.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, could you say your name again? We didn't catch it.
Pamela Trollick. It's Trhlik.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela. Mr. Mackey raised his hand.
Hi.
My name is Ferd Mackey. I live at 301 4th Avenue Northeast in Hazen. Before I make any comments, I have a couple of questions for the board. The moratorium that was discussed, it was laid out to come into effect tomorrow. Is that what I'm understanding? Or was it in effect now already?
It's in effect.
Okay.
Fred? One of the things that I'd like to keep this is not as a debate, but just to offer
Opinion?
your opinions. Thank
Okay,
you.
I just want to get my facts straight before I offer those
Yeah,
opinions.
well, we'll take your opinions regardless.
Okay. One of the things I would like to, actually, I don't know if anybody's seen on the board has seen this letter that was written by Tony Clark. He was a former North Dakota PSC commissioner from 2001 to 2012, and he also was a member of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission from 2012 to 2016. Just parts of his letter in the Bismarck Tribune about 2 weeks ago. You know, it's been brought up more than once here that this whole discussion here has turned into an us versus thing between the coal people and the wind people, and I didn't think that should be appropriate for this meeting at all. And then he said that the hydraulic fracturing that's going on in western North Dakota is the real enemy of the coal industry because of the numbers involved. Here's how that lays out. During the last summer, generation from coal accounted for 39.9% of all energy in its footprint, down from 50% 2 years ago. Gas was up 30%, was at 30%, up from 22%, and nuclear held steady at about 16%. As for wind generation, it was only 5.9% of all generation. So the threat that's being perceived here is, to me, inflated. On a more personal note, I am not anti-coal, as has been said by so many folks that have stood up here today. My family came to Mercer County 125 years ago, and about 25 or 30 years into that, they started digging coal underground by hand. If you go to the Beulah Museum, that little coal car that's in front of there that came out of my grandfather's mine. I have all of his powder borers, I have the little miner's lamps, I have all that stuff in my possession yet. So we're heavily invested here in the county. My son is now the fourth generation of my family that is making his living. He's an engineer at the Dakota Gasification. So in that respect, I think my family has as much at risk. If you really think that coal is going to be threatened by this little tiny wind farm, we are at risk also. As a landowner, I think that is a sad state of affairs that somebody else should tell me what I can do with my own property. Because this all boils down to economic gain. For my family, for everybody in here that's promoting the coal industry. Capital Power has told me that they currently have a buyer for the power that this wind farm would generate. I think the window is closing on that. I would have to verify that with the representative. I don't know that. I was told that by Mr. Bob Evans. So I guess in closing, I had some other things I was going to ask you guys about, but apparently you just wanted my opinion. That's my opinion, Marv.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very well said. Is there any handout or something that you wanted to?
I can leave you a copy of this letter that was in the Tribune.
If you presented, I'd like you to do that, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ferd. There's a couple other people listed here. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Go ahead, sir.
My name is Art Seaman. My address is 4016 37th Avenue Northwest. Hazen's my hometown. I own 3/4 of the land in the proposed wind development. I made quite a few notes prior to the meeting, and I've made a lot more notes during the meeting. Because I don't have them verbatim and made them during the meeting, I'd like to read some, so if you excuse my reading.
No problem.
I'm gonna go ahead and read. So, along with Chuck, I was present at the groundbreaking of UPA and Basin Plants in Stanton. I think that was 1963. I'm not sure about the year, but I think that's pretty accurate.
64 and 65.
64? All right. I was 13 at the time, and I received an autograph from Quentin Burdick and Bill Guy. I thought that was pretty great stuff. And I remember there was opposition to those plants, but it did bring a lot of employment and revenue to the area. So I'm wondering why coal and wind cannot coexist. I'm not anti-coal, but I do favor the wind. We are a energy-hungry nation. We want energy, we want more and more energy. So, again, I can't understand why they can't coexist. Perhaps not on the exact same acreage, but the emphasis for future energy is clean energy. I don't think that you can argue that. In thinking back to the last election, I believe that the future of coal, according to Hillary's platform, was pretty dismal. So I'd like the board to consider the future of coal versus wind. I think the future for wind is not nearly as dismal as the future for coal. That being said, again, I'm not anti-coal. I think with as much energy as this country wants, I hope that they can coexist. I do see wind as a better future revenue than coal. I think that the prospect of coal revenue in this area is probably diminishing somewhat. So I don't understand what's to be gained by the moratorium to basically stop the development of this wind farm. I don't understand that at all. I'd like to ask for an answer, but I guess what you're looking for at this point is opinions. So I guess I'll decline in asking, but I'm very curious to know why. What is to be gained? I don't understand how the power distribution grid is tied together, but I believe if the development of this wind farm is stopped, wind will just continue in other areas. So why not allow that revenue to happen here? Why not allow that revenue to happen here? So I also understand that the conditional use document for the proposed wind farm was received on the 29th. And I would like to ask how long before a decision is forthcoming on that? What's a reasonable amount of time? That I would like an answer to. What is a reasonable amount of time?
I'll give you an ambiguous answer, not to be ambiguous. A reasonable amount of time is whatever it takes for us to learn as much as we can to give you a good answer.
Well, that is pretty ambiguous, but it would seem like a time, at least in months, 1, 2, 3, wouldn't be that difficult.
I can't answer that.
Give me a moment to look at my notes. Again, I didn't have them memorized, which I wish now I did. I hope that wind will receive fair representation from the board. At this point, I don't think that it has. The moratorium was issued without any type of a hearing prior to the moratorium. That is correct, isn't it?
It's issued. We'll just go with that for now.
Right. I can't think of anything else that I would like to say, so I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I do have a list of the opponents and the proponents, but just to make sure that it's accurate, is there anybody else that would like to speak up that opposes the moratorium? Go ahead, sir.
I actually have something to say. So, my name's Evan Whiteford,
Say that
and
again?
Evan Whiteford. I'm not even from this area. I'm up northwest, Epping, North Dakota. I don't even have much to do with wind tower to really tell you about. What I do is I represent the gas and oil workers up in the northwest corner of the state. A lot of the membership that I represent with the labor's union come from this area. Yeah, we all know what happened to the oil prices. Well, the jobs went down the tank with that. You know, and just kind of not trying to sound like a broken record, but we need to capitalize on every industry we can because there's people's lives that are at stake here. There's not much holding people to North Dakota. You know, it's hard to see the people that I work with day in and day out have to leave their jobs up northwestern North Dakota to come back here. You know, I appreciate the coal. I appreciate the wind towers. I worked myself in some nuclear back in Minnesota when jobs were a little bit lean. We need to capitalize on every little bit of energy, every job that we can. Not everybody is a rancher. Not everybody is a farmer. You know, we got to appreciate them folks too, but there's people here that their whole career relies on temporary work. And, you know, I don't think we should be shutting the door on wind power. There's people that need these temporary jobs. A construction worker, his whole career is based on temporary work. If anybody can guarantee you more than 3 weeks worth of work, they're lying to you. You know, and like you said, we have a ton of people who in our union that they benefit from coal. Their whole careers have been based around coal. There's also people that don't have that there for them. They ran up to the oil fields. They need the jobs because there's nothing up there right now. It's slow. We don't know when that's going to come back. Price of oil's come up a little bit, but you know, when companies really do anything, it's got their oil hedged. But how many of the taxpayers of this county are back here sitting without a job? I think we really need to be thinking about the future with the jobs with the people that don't have the stakes in with farming, ranching, or coal. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. If there's any other opponents to the moratorium that have something of new information, they're more than welcome to speak up or come to the podium. Once we close this, I'm not going to open it back up again. Are there any other opponents to the moratorium that choose to speak? If you keep it brief and it's new information. It has to be new information too, please.
I believe that it is.
Okay, very well.
One thing that I forgot to ask. Of the 500 letters supporting the moratorium, how many were from Mercer County?
I don't know that. I just received that moments before the meeting.
Okay.
Please, the people are addressing the commission. The gallery, please, needs to honor that.
Okay, well, I got the answers.
Thank you. Okay, there be no other speakers, opponents to the moratorium? Pardon me? Opponents. Opponents, I'm talking. Are there any more speakers opposing the moratorium? Speakers opposing the moratorium are now closed. Now we'll be looking for speakers that are in favor of the moratorium. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Mark Pierce, 1024 Cherry Lane, Beulah, North Dakota. I am the founder of the group Faces of North Dakota Coal. I'll start just by answering his question. I don't know the exact count. I lost it at 10 o'clock this morning. It's north of 400. It's not quite 500, but all but 4 of them are Mercer County residents. and the 4 that are not Mercer County residents own property in the county. I allowed them to participate because they wanted to. I'm going to start off first by, it'd be nice if I could address the crowd also, but Pam brought up a good point about growing up in Bowman County. I can tell you that I'm the only one here that was personally affected by a coal mine closure. My dad worked at Knife River Coal in Gascoyne. That's how I got to Beulah. I can tell you what happens when coal goes away, and I submit to you, I would encourage you all to go visit Reeder, North Dakota. Reeder, North Dakota was a vibrant, small community prior to coal going away. I think it'd be all worth your time to take a trip through that area. I'm not here to speak coal versus wind. The group I founded is purely, my mantra is it's people, families, and communities. And that's what these letters represent. I'd like to read the letter to the commission. Dear Commissioners, I, Mark Pierce, submit this letter in support of the resolution at the May 2020 County Commission meeting, which imposes a moratorium on zoning applications to the Mercer County Planning and Zoning Board and the Board of County Commissioners related to wind energy and wind-related operations until further order of the board, but not to exceed 24 months. As a resident of Mercer County, I appreciate the board's foresight by adopting the resolution to allow adequate time to assess the economic impacts of further intermittent wind energy development in Mercer County. The resolution is prudent policy, which considers the best interest of Mercer County on the whole. Mercer County has enjoyed decades of prosperity, largely due to the revenue stream provided by the lignite coal industry. All residents of the county have benefited directly through employment and indirectly through the social services funded from this economic powerhouse industry. With the rapid saturation of the transmission infrastructure by the intermittent energy, the full impact of the existing wind development is unknown. Further intermittent energy development will add more uncertainty to revenue projections at the county and local government levels. The additional tax revenue wind development brings to the table pales in comparison to the revenue that would be lost from coal severance and coal conversion taxes. Intermittent energy tax revenues have not and will not ever replace the tax revenues generated by the lignite industry. I recognize the landowner's rights argument which is before you. I empathize with their position. With that, though, it's important to remember your commission represents the interests of the entire county while giving consideration to individual stakeholders, not individual stakeholders while giving consideration to the entire county. Again, that is important to remember. I firmly believe the best government is the government closest to the people. Maintaining the resolution in its original form will ensure that your commission meets that standard. Coal is not dead. Coal will be a part of Mercer County's future. Coal will be a part of America's future. We've just begun to fight. I'd also like to submit a letter of support from the Beulah School Superintendent and the Hazen School Superintendent.
Who says government doesn't have paper, huh? Okay, is there any other, Christie?
Christy Obenauer, 421 First Avenue Northwest in Hazen. And I'm going to be incredibly brief, which I hope you're grateful for, and succinct and kind of high level here. I just want to take a moment to speak in support of the moratorium that the Mercer County Commission has put in place. It is incredibly important in an evolution of the energy industry that has such an enormous footprint and deep roots in a local economy to afford the space and the time to be thoughtful. Decisions being made today will define our future, from the vibrancy of our local main streets and sustainability of our businesses to the economic livelihoods of our families who live and work here and constitute the who, the faces and heartbeats of our community. The moratorium the county has put in place allows time to study the impacts of wind energy development to all the facets of our economy and our community, ensuring we have considered and measured the risks involved and understand how they have the potential to shape, for better or for worse, the future of these economies and these communities we call home, and to which we are so deeply connected and vested. So thank you for being thoughtful and for the opportunity to express my sentiments. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Christy. Anybody else that would like to speak for the moratorium?
Commissioners, my name is Ladd Erickson. I'm the McLean County State's Attorney, and if you had a block here for a neutral, I would come up and testify as a neutral. But this doesn't affect McLean County directly, but there's things that are happening in McLean County that I want you to be aware of because they affect you. And I sent in some written testimony for your record. I assume that got forwarded to all you guys, and I'm not going to read it verbatim unless you guys want me to. I can kind of bullet point it here. I just want to give you first of all, I want to just introduce my commission chairman, Steve Cottingham from the McLean County Commission. And I got to correct my former commissioner too, Pam. McLean County was not going to get one wind tower, 1 megawatt of wind when GRE proposed this. Mercer, I didn't see any maps that had Mercer County wind farms. You were going to end up absorbing large cross-country power lines from other counties, but I didn't see anything in those early things. There could have been, but it was primarily an effort that didn't affect us getting any revenue or jobs or anything like that. There was nothing proposed from McLean County in that, but crossing the river with power lines from other areas. So I hope that makes it maybe a little clearer why McLean County took its action. So anyway, GRE earlier announced that they are going to be out of the lignite energy business in 2022, and Coal Creek Station will close if they don't find new owners. There's a concerted ongoing effort to get that done. It's most likely going to be months, potentially longer than a year or more, before we actually get an answer on what's going to happen with Coal Creek and the Falkirk mine. I'll just read the quote from the governor when they announced that they were going to move out of North Dakota. The governor said that he and the lieutenant governor are more determined than ever to find a path forward to Coal Creek Station that preserves its high-paying jobs and keeps the North Dakota's most efficient, updated coal-fired plant in the grid to ensure baseload power for our state and the region. And my commission chair and I get updates from Washington on what's happening, and I give a little information on what Senator Hovind is doing right now. 3 weeks ago, the Industrial Commission approved $3 million be spent at Coal Creek to do the pre-study on the carbon capture for the long term, which should benefit all of our lignite plants. Blue Flint has been approved for carbon capture, the ethanol plant funding. So those things are still moving forward. The power line is a big issue. There's an ongoing process about the DC line. It's separate than, I don't know if there's DC lines in Mercer. Basically, the two that I'm familiar with are the Dakota line and the Coal Creek line. They're long distance traveler lines. And that power line has a significant impact on all the discussions that are going on because it can move a lot of power into the MISO grid, which makes up 15 states in Canada. And without lignite energy in it, it really doesn't benefit North Dakota very much, considering all the towers on farmland and different things, and that's a long story. But GRE has been wonderful to work with over the years, and they are moving their wind resources out of this region, which leaves the power line issues unresolved. But on June 17th, they issued a statement saying that they are either going to keep the power line and rent it out, they're going to sell it, or they're just going to turn it over to the grid to operate. So we're not sure about that. The State Industrial Commission director testified about a month ago that if we get to the 2-year window and Coal Creek's future isn't secured, that the state has the authority to take control of that power line to determine future use. The reason the grid and the state would be interested in it is the grid and the state are short of baseload power. We currently have excess wind trying to get in the grid, and I'll maybe get into that in a minute. So there's a lot of moving parts on the McLean County side of the river here. And we don't know, we can't tell you what those answers are yet. We're hoping that we can start deciding that because some things over there affect. Now, what thing that made me curious when I saw this project, because there are wind companies calling us and we're having a lot of discussions with our leaders and different things, is I've been assured by Great River Energy twice in the last week that they have nothing to do with this project. They don't have permission to go into that substation. They don't have a purchase power agreement with them. There's nowhere to sell the power to GRE. So I called Dakota, or I emailed them yesterday, and they said, no, we have no deals. So you need a purchase power agreement to sell power before you have a project.
I'm sorry, I missed a point. You said they don't have it. Who are you referring to?
Capital Power.
Thank you.
There's no place for this. This is going to sound funny, but the biggest beneficiaries of your moratorium are the landowners that have signed leases. Okay, and I'm going to explain that. This is very complex stuff. But until you get a purchase power agreement presented, you don't have a project, and you may never get one, because the entity that's going to potentially get established on the other side of the river is the one that you would form the purchase power agreement, and we're months or a year or more away from deciding who that's going to be and what do they want for wind. They may have their own wind resources, things like that. So it's a constant thing. I've had a wind company called me 3 times. They want to come out and meet with me, looking to come into the area, because if there is this new entity created, it's likely going to include some wind energy. I'm probably the last guy in North Dakota that would ever support banning wind, and I would oppose any bill at the legislature to try to do that, because I think that we're going to need wind energy mixed with our lignite plants to cash flow them the way that national energy policy is. Moratoriums make some sense if you have unknown questions, but as far as people that, because when we did our zoning ordinances, we had a lot of people want to just ban wind. And I testified at our hearing on it that that's a mistake. Okay, we can't just make ban, you know. There's no purpose for that, and I hope the legislature doesn't go down that road, because there's a lot of people upset about Coal Creek, and I've had legislators call me about it, and I'm totally against it. I'll just tell you that. I don't know where that sits with Faces of Coal, but we have to watch out for that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I don't know, the second issue that needs to be addressed before you have any purpose of doing any zoning is a MISO grid interconnect. They've applied in 2018, it says on their project. They're expecting to get that in 2021. That is what is necessary to get on the grid. Currently in North Dakota, we have 1,600 megawatts of wind that have been permitted, zoned, and approved, but can't get on the grid. And 900 megawatts of that wind, which is essentially in that area of a Coal Creek station, well, actually a double Coal Creek station if you look at the 1,600, somewhere in there. 900 of that have been waiting over 4 years. And that's with Coal Creek Station in the grid with its base load 1,100 megawatts. And what happens is these physicists recalculate the grid risk when they lose base load power versus how many renewables come in, because renewables take a lot more transmission capacity to operate. It is possible that the loss of Coal Creek Station is going to come out in the equations that it ends wind development in North Dakota. Because the testimony of MISO and the grids at the legislature, which I've been tracking and back and looked at, is we are getting close to our transmission capacity and we can't take any more wind and lose more base load. So it might be years before MISO lets somebody on the grid. It looks optimistic to me that it'd be 2021, but I don't have any information on that. And if Coal Creek Station doesn't survive this effort to reestablish an entity over there, and all the work that we're all doing, which is not necessarily a full-time job for me right now, but sometimes pretty close, there cannot just be wind energy in that DC line for some physics reasons. Physics governs all this stuff. Politics governs policy, but physics governs whether any of this is going to work. There has to be a gas plant built. Probably $600 million was the testimony about 3 weeks ago, with a pipeline probably coming through Mercer County for that, and maybe a synchronous condenser, something to regulate the voltage. The testimony of the transmission authority is without Coal Creek Station, we cannot regulate voltage in the rest of the grid in North Dakota. And so we have to, that's why they'll seize the line and stuff, because you could shut down everybody's grid without Coal Creek in it. This is the technical problem with it, and why there's uniform support from the governor and everybody to try to solve this problem. But this problem might be many years away, and here's where it comes in to be a problem for the landowners that sign leases, okay? A couple things drive wind policy, but certainly what drives them are tax incentives in Washington. And they are always sunsetted, right? They're sunsetted again this year, and it's been a process of continually expanding. And you've got to get your project in under these sunsets to qualify for 10 years of subsidies, okay? So there's all these IRS tricks to do that. So I'm going to give you a couple Google searches, okay? So you can look at. But if you Google like the production tax credit and then the physical work test, okay, what you're going to see is a bunch of accounting firms advertising to wind companies how to maximize your subsidies. And just so you understand what we're talking about here, 800 megawatts of wind that was really proposed here has been calculated to be worth to the owner of it $1 billion over 10 years of subsidies, okay? And those, one of the philosophical problems we had with that is the idea and the design of those subsidies are for production, and where it's produced should be realized is where those should stay. So while I get criticized about my position is whatever subsidies accompany that generation, $1 billion over 10 years, those belong in the housing markets and the grocery stores in Hazen and Beulah and Washburn and Underwood, not you get green electrons and you get the subsidies in somebody else's economy. And so when these wind companies have been calling me, and I haven't talked to Capital Power, but I've been clear. I said, if we get to the point where we're going to need some wind energy to cash flow this thing across the river, this entity, you know, said my opinions on it is it's going to be for the benefit of this area. You know, we'll hire workers, the union guys, you know, and all that stuff. And what I've said is we might need to get the 4 counties together, Sheridan, Mercer, Mclean, Oliver, and say, okay, what do we need? It's likely going to be a much bigger project than this one, is what we're going to be needing. And there's concern about cross-country power lines with our legacy power lines. And so I've just told everybody from our political establishment that is we need to do this smart, because we don't want to upset the whole apple cart here with our people. You know, we need to plan it. And I've agreed. I think the Coal Conversion County Group would be an excellent format to facilitate some of these future discussions. But we're not ready for any consideration of wind coming across the river for a while yet. And so you're not harming your landowners in any way by your moratorium. It's not like if you took it off today, they're going to get wind in the next couple of years or any payments or anything like that. But if you look at the way that physical work test works, is you can go out and let's say your lease is running up to its 5 years or something like that, or you're running out on a sunset on a federal tax subsidy. To get the subsidy secured, you just go bulldozer some dirt up and roads and you pour some concrete, and you can see the explanations if you Google the physical work test. Now you brought it in under that window to qualify the project, but that landowner may never get any money, may never get a wind turbine, might just sit there with somebody that had built roads and poured concrete they don't have to reclaim. And it's a problem. I gave you one Google search on Glacier Ridge Wind Farm by Valley City. A lot of media on how that happened there. They were trying to beat the 2016 sunset on the production tax credit. Just, built the roads, put some snow fence around it, applied to the IRS for the subsidies, but the project didn't amount to much, So what you're doing here is, because there's so many moving parts on the other side of the river, I would ask this, and I know this is a little different because I did some more thinking on it, but when I was at the Coal Conversion County's board meeting last week, I said I don't think the county should do any zoning until after the session, because the Coal Creek issue has spawned a lot of interest in legislators, policy and energy policy, a lot of debate, a lot of contacts and conversations, and we have some major problems with our energy policies that need to be looked at. Potentially ones that are actually going to lead to the public weighing in on it because of how messed up it is. But in any event, I don't think it's your moratorium. I didn't think, because there's so many moving parts on this, that you needed to start doing a bunch of zoning that's going to but there is something that you could help everybody with. And I put that in my last paragraph. It might even help the legislature. This company has asked you to amend your zoning ordinances on a couple areas that might be fine. It didn't strike me as an issue. I don't know all the facts of it or motives, but I'd research it more if it was my thing. But it didn't seem like a big deal. But I think counties need to start getting into the business of requiring purchase power agreements and grid interconnect proof before you do any zoning. Because you can end up zoning a project, your landowners just end up with nothing. They end up with roads and cement, no payments, the way these leases are written. And then they sit there forever, like these 1,600 megawatts in North Dakota that can't get on a grid, So I think it would be beneficial from a consumer protection point of view that if you're willing to use the moratorium time to do some stuff, because that comment period should bring in Basin and Dakota and wind companies. I've worked with the wind companies a lot when we've done our amendments in the past. And I think we've have a pretty good ordinance with their input, And I wouldn't get in, like now because of the legislation, go and do a bunch of stuff and that. But that idea, because our PSC is running, the Public Service Commission permits these things, and they're running all over the state dealing with these wind farms in divided communities, and they're not going anywhere. But they are stuck with, does it meet the compliance of state law, even though it's never going to get on the grid or likely not going to get on for years. And these incentives, the way the IRS has written them, are causing landowner harm, not any income. So I think I think there's a lot of questions you could ask this company, whether they fit into how we develop the wind that accompanies a future Coal Creek. If Coal Creek isn't there, a future gas plant and condenser out there, and then some wind. That's all to be determined down the road. And so at this point, you're not harming anybody by your moratorium. You're not costing anybody any jobs. It might be down the road that we're over here saying this project would fit into what we need in Mclean, part of it anyway. I don't know, but I think I don't see how you're affecting any of these landowners that think, well, your moratorium affected things here, because you cannot, they put it on their website, they don't have it, they're expecting an interconnected 2021, so there's nobody gonna get anything but some minor scratching on their land. Prior to that, and I think that, some questions. I did moratorium language actually in our ordinance last time, so we just have it in there, and it has the same process that your state's attorney came up with, which was you put the moratorium in, and then you develop a due process part to test moratorium and bring in facts you don't know. But the purpose that you do this for is if you've got too many moving parts out there, but you get into people want to start applying for permits and stuff. I like the idea of a moratorium not as a penalty or as changing course in an industry, but this is a big issue. It might be before you, And then what that does is let you send what legal lawyers call interrogatories. You know, like here, let's send these people that want this petition off, all these questions that we have, you know, like, who are you gonna sell this power to? Why are we even doing a divided community zoning if you got no market for this? And right now, I don't see how that can possibly be, because it might be a few years before we figure out that there's an entity on the other side of the river that would even want to buy this power. And the DC power line doesn't look like it's in, nobody knows where that's gonna go as of this month and what energy that needs. MISO takes over. That might be the best thing for a region, because they're asking everybody to quit shutting down plants. We need base load. We don't need more wind. We're stuck with wind here, and we need more of these coal plants so to stay in the system. So it's a big, complicated process. I know there's a motion. I think there's a future for wind in our counties, but right now we just have this bouncing ball on how we're gonna handle Coal Creek, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, in your mind, I want to clarify a couple things here. And I asked Capital Power representative, we've heard from him and one other person that they're working on an agreement, the window's closing. Does the moratorium affect them going forward in those negotiations?
No.
Okay, and based on what you're saying, and I will totally admit, I do not know near as much as you clearly do on this topic. When we've done conditional uses for different things before, and then everybody has to go to the PSC. A lot of times it's because they need our approval before they can go to the PSC. That's not the same for these agreements that you're talking about, is it? That
No.
they need our approval to get those agreements?
No, they go out and make it's a private contract. I'm willing to sell this car to you for this much. I'm willing to sell this power to you for this much. They need to have that, have a company. The DC substation is not up to date, so, or the sand station is probably gonna need an upgrade, right, before it could even get there, and then there needs to probably be upgrades going to the Coal Creek DC line. Because you got AC coming off the, let me get technical, but you got AC coming off the wind farms. And whether they can convert that at the substation, or they have to run it all the way over to Coal Creek, you know, it's just a bunch of technical stuff. And who's gonna pay for that? And GRE's actually gonna do some stuff on updating on some of those old lines, because they're required to do by MISO. But GRE's assured me they've sold no transmission. They own all those lines. They own the substation. You know, so they have no agreements to let any of that be used by Capital Power, is what they have told me. Okay, so you have a project with nowhere to go if that's the case.
And it's two agreements then, the purchase power agreement and an interconnection?
That's two different things. Typically what you would do is, if you're Basin Electric, for example, and you want some wind energy for your portfolio, you would go reach a purchase power agreement with a wind development company. So then they would move forward from that and apply for a grid interconnect. There's just so much wind in all these states now that those are taking years, right? So then it gets to be a complication with these leases running out at the time of the lease. So then there's this partial work done to try to qualify the project, which may never get hooked up, and then the landowner doesn't ever get paid, and it's this big mess if you start Googling stuff. Texas went through it when they hit their transmission capacity like we did. We just have stranded assets, no connection, and we're at that point here. So it's two different things. The grid is run by the feds for reliability, and they continually assess, and the problem is they don't control baseload plants that they need, like nuclear, coal, gas. They don't control that. So somebody could just shut down a plant that they were counting on when they permitted a wind project, and now that one's gone, and then they have to recalculate the risk to the grid. And that Russo project was a $250 million project. It cost $500 million to get on the grid, because the grid needs that much transmission upgrade to even use that little bit of wind. And so it killed the project, basically. And I put that quote of Julie Fedorchak about that Russo one in my letter to you. Is that's what might happen, is you could have this company apply to MISO, they come back and say, we need you to upgrade a whole bunch of stuff, way more than this project's ever worth. You know, and that's why I think it's important for the counties to have fair zoning without having divided communities and all the passion that causes. Is you got your interconnect, you got your purchase power. Okay, now we're getting to a point where we can actually zone for people's concerns. Today you heard people thinking that, well, if you guys lift your moratorium, I'm going to get a wind farm. There are long ways from that, many years potentially before that would even happen. So Just want to be clear about that and put this in the record. I'd be happy to answer any more questions.
I have one question. You said a whole lot of things. I wrote most of the stuff down as best I can understand. I do understand a little bit about the electrical part. You said a whole bunch, I think. Can you summarize your suggestions?
Well, I'm a little nervous about, I like the opportunity to look at what an idea of requiring purchase power agreements and grid interconnects on the front end of any zoning or permitting application. To me, it seems like common sense, so your landowners that sign leases aren't holding the bag all the time, because that's happening now.
Got it?
And I think if you guys could be willing to do that and solicit comments from the industry and basin, it would help decide whether that might be good state policy. Not just one county, but state law, the PSC, because they're dealing with the same problem. So that suggestion, and what the company asked for, I think if I remember right, and it was a while back, was the ability to have more ground clearance on their blades. And the only issue I would have with that, if it was in Mclean, would be, does that make sure it doesn't hamper a farm renter and his equipment? That 50 foot seems like it'd be high enough. And secondly, the flicker on a bigger blade, if you've got, on this particular project, if you've got houses, where that bigger blade is gonna cause more flicker, that would be the only reason you wouldn't wanna do it, I would think. I don't know enough about it, but it didn't seem like that big a deal when I read it. And they
Well-
wanted to be able to sell the,
And Mr. Chairman, if you guys will remember, they also were proposing a change to our 4-year limit. In our ordinance, it has that the permit will expire at 4 years. It required them to come back in. I think most of you remember we had Elite, the operating one. Theirs had expired. They had to come back in and reapply. And then just in last December, it was the other project, it's escaping me, but it was in December that we denied the NextEra, I think, Infinity, denied the extension of that. And so that was a project where the land would have been held up for those 4 years, but that's what the other proposal was, to take away that automatic expiration.
any other questions? Thank you. I guess it's my highest hope, Commission, that I'm here in a couple years asking you to help us find some wind towers. Because we got an entity over there that needs to cash flow. We don't have the space. We need 300 megawatts or something. That's probably the direction this thing's going, and I'd like to see us over here asking for help. But right now, we got too many bouncing balls that require answers for us, and I don't want you guys to misunderstand. Do what you want with your moratorium. That's not our business, but there's misunderstandings of what it means to lift it too. So you may be better off helping your landowners and not doing that. But thank you.
Okay, are there any other speakers in favor? Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Brady Torgerson, 417 7th Street Northwest, Beulah, North Dakota. As an employee of a local community bank, we rely on the people of Mercer County to keep our doors open. We also, along with providing a service to the people of Mercer County, we provide 15 jobs for families that live in our community. Mercer County's economic base is reliant on the industries that are currently here. The plants and mines provide the need for other service businesses like my bank in Mercer County. The people that work at these places have permanent jobs at these mines and plants, and they live in our community. They eat, they shop, they recreate, their kids go to school in our counties. If we pull the need for those industries out, some of these subsequent things go away too. I'm not going to touch on Mclean County. I think we had that covered. More knowledgeable than I am. My family relocated to Beulah in 2014. My parents moved. My in-laws moved. My grandfather moved. My sister and her family moved. I have had 2 kids since I've lived in Mercer County. Hopefully they are Beulah miners when they grow up. This town and community means a lot to me. My bank has been in Mercer County since 1915. I take it very seriously. I take a lot of pride in being a Beulah resident, and I think prematurely lifting the moratorium could possibly be irresponsible and could potentially be devastating to our tax base. Thank you.
Thank you, Brady. Any other speakers? Jerry, please. I'll get you, John.
Chairman Schwer, members of the commission, ladies. My name is Jerry Obenauer, 421 First Avenue Northwest in Hazen. I'm also the mayor in Hazen. There were a lot of things mentioned today that are very enlightening to me. There are a lot of very smart people in this room, which we're fortunate to have representing all of us. The thing I want to mention to you today is that coal severance and conversion for the city of Hazen makes up about 50% of our general fund budget. That has been reduced in the past few years, and we know it's going to get reduced in years to come. We understand that. Even though I'm wearing a Faces of Coal sticker on my shirt, I know that there's room in the sandbox for everybody to play. I am not against any other forms of energy. However, what I have told other people when they ask me about this is, what is the financial benefit for our community of 2,400 people that if it's going to replace coal, what kind of economic advantage are we going to gain? How are we going to continue to operate our community the way we have, fortunately, for the last 40 years, 40 plus years? So that has been my question to those that have called me, asked me to write letters for you to lift the moratorium, which I am in favor of you guys keeping the moratorium until you learn more about the financial benefits for all of our communities and all of our people in Mercer County in towns. So I'm going to be brief, and I appreciate your time and your willingness to listen to all of us. Have a great day.
Thank you. Beaver, John's been waving his hands so long his arm's getting sore. So.
I'm John Phillips. I chair the coal conversion counties, and that organization has been around since the late 60s, early 70s with that, and basically it represents the three coal producing counties, which are Mclean, Mercer, and Oliver with that. Currently, we've been in contact with the energy producing entities in Mercer County, specifically an industry Q&A with Basin Electric, and also several lengthy meetings with North American Coal since the announcement with GRE, as we know how critical the jobs and tax base is for Mercer County and the entire state and area with that. So we think as the wind requests move forward and we need to be cognizant of the jobs we have now, our power plant industries and our mining industry with that. But we also understand that there's got to be a fit also to maybe diversify and have wind energy. We're not opposed to wind energy, but we need to do it right, as Ladd said with that. So we've made an effort to meet with those industries to understand what their impact is when we talk about wind, because we hear that often with that, and being able to cash flow with that and with that. So we believe that as Ladd indicated, that we would be a good resource for working through this project with both wind and coal and the power industries and try to move forward and make a real working environment for everyone involved today with that.
Thank you. Now let Beaver go, and he's turned him down once. He don't want him to run away.
Afternoon, my name's Beaver Braitman. I reside in Beulah, North Dakota. I have a letter that I'd like to read from you from Travis Frey, the mayor of Beulah. He couldn't attend today.
Okay.
So I'd like to read that to you. It says, Dear Commissioners, as a mayor of Beulah, I support all forms of energy that are produced and consumed in our state of North Dakota. Even though I support all forms of energy, there are some forms of energy that are more beneficial to the city of Beulah and Mercer County residents and state residents of North Dakota. The Red Book, issued every other year by the North Dakota Tax Department, the most recent issue has statistics through 2018. This book has every tax structure for the state of North Dakota. I would like to take a little bit of your time to explain how taxation of energy helps every resident in Mercer County and every resident in the city of Beulah. Coal is taxed two ways. When it is removed from the ground, the state imposes a 37.5-cent tax per ton. When the coal is converted to electricity or other form of energy or byproduct, it is taxed at 37.5% per ton for coal conversion tax. In 2018, coal severance collection was over 11.6 million, of which more than 7.7 was returned to the coal counties, and then further broken down to the cities within the coal counties. Mercer County received roughly 57.9% of this collected tax. Coal conversion tax in 2018 was over 26.7 million, with nearly 4.6 million going back to the counties, with Mercer County receiving 45.8% of those funds. These funds are directly benefit the residents of Beulah. In 2018, Beulah received nearly $290,000 from coal conversion and almost $655,000 from coal severance tax, for a total of almost $945,000. These funds accounted for roughly 12.7% of the revenue for the city's budget in 2018. Mercer County is not an oil-producing county. It does not have a direct impact that counties do that produce oil or have production taxes or oil extraction taxes. The state taxes fuel sales, whether gas, diesel, natural gas, or propane. These taxes are redistributed based on population and other factors. Currently, the state does not have a taxation on any forms of energy such as nuclear, wind, solar, hydro, etc. It is only right that the residents of Mercer County benefit the energy that is produced in the county. If you eliminate the coal taxes from the city of Beulah, the city would have to increase our mill levy by more than 2.5 times its current level to generate the same tax benefit we see from coal. That increase would be nearly 45 mills above what is allowed by the state of North Dakota. Nuclear, wind, solar, and hydro have a primary purpose to produce electricity. Coal can be used to make many things besides electricity, but the primary purpose in North Dakota is to make electricity. It is simple. The better coal does in Mercer County, the better the county does. I support the energy that supports the most residents, whether by taxes, jobs, or economic benefit. Until other forms of energy contribute taxes, jobs, and economic benefit to the residents of Mercer County to the level of coal, I cannot support their development or permitting. I appreciate your time to hear my concerns and wish I could have been to the meeting in person. Thank you, Travis Wright. So with that, I would like to express my opinion.
Sure.
The purpose of the moratorium, from my discussions, is for this commission to take and learn more about wind power and to educate yourselves, to make a better decision for the residents here in Mercer County. And so that is the reason for this. It's not a coal against wind or that. It's strictly to educate yourselves on what is best for Mercer County and to create ordinances and zoning that best benefit the residents here in Mercer County. I understand you already have an ordinance, and that you are looking at what you can do to make sure that that current ordinance benefits the residents here. As property owners, we're all stewards of the land. As a steward of the land, we are not allowed to do things on our land that could be determined detrimental to adjoining landowners. And if the moratorium is lifted without the proper research and understanding of what those ordinances should be, it could detrimentally affect our other property owners, residents here in Mercer County, and our cities. So I support that the moratorium stays in place until this commission is satisfied with and has the knowledge they need to feel that they can take and properly protect residents here in Mercer County. There's a lot of other industries in Mercer County that could be negatively affected by a wind farm. But again, I'm a supporter of a wind farm if it is beneficial and can support the residents. Tourism is something that has not been mentioned here today, and I think it needs to be. Whether wind towers take and promote or don't promote tourism, I think is huge. Over 21.9 million people visit North Dakota last year, spending over $3.1 billion in our state. Tourism makes up 4% of the gross domestic product that generates 5.8% of the state and local sales tax. In 2015, Mercer County had visitor expenditures of over $22 million and created over 363 jobs. I don't think those visitors came here to look at a wind farm. I'm not saying that it'd be detrimental, but it is something that the commission, I think, needs to consider when we all benefit from tourism. The lake north of us benefits us all. I feel our county commissioners have correctly placed a moratorium on wind farms until the ordinance can be put in place that will protect and benefit all residents and business that live and operate in the county and that you've sworn to serve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment based on what he said for the room. The moratorium, the purpose, and the review of the ordinances, you're absolutely correct. That's not the first time we have done that as a county. The temporary housing ordinance that we did, commercial vehicles, a few years back, we utilized the same mechanism, the moratorium, to do that. Currently, we also have a solar moratorium, and the frac sand moratorium that we had has now been lifted because the board, in short order, came up with the ordinance specific to that. So you are absolutely correct that is the purpose and one we've utilized before, and it is to kind of put a pause so we can get a handle on it. Part of that being with the company having come in proposing their own amendments. We had, I think, done amendments to it a couple months back before that, kind of highlighted that we need to take a look. So I just wanted to touch on that from his comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for? Go ahead, sir. Gotta be quick.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Dave Nearing. I live rural Burley County, and I'm not here to speak pro or against the moratorium, but just to offer some clarity. I appreciate the fact that one of the previous gentlemen talked about the letter to the editor in the Bismarck Tribune by Tony Clark. FYI, Tony Clark is a wind lobbyist in D.C. He was a former public service commissioner and commissioner on FERC, but is employed by the wind industry. But I appreciate that for another fact. The other fact is that they used some statistics in that letter talking about natural gas being the reason for the demise of coal, and that's absolutely not true in the state of North Dakota. They used nationwide statistics. If you look at the generation mix in the state of North Dakota, rather than 5% being wind like it is nationally, 27% of the generation in 2019, these are facts from the EIA, the Energy Information Administration, 27% was wind, 63% was coal. Natural gas provided 3%, so we don't have the issues with nat gas being the big bully taking over coal in North Dakota. So I'd like to let you know about that. The last portion that I'd like to speak about is the disparity, and I don't mean this to be anti-wind or wind against coal, but we all need to know that lignite industry in North Dakota provides 14,000 direct and indirect jobs. That's 3,900 direct jobs in the coal industry, as opposed to 146 for wind. 500 total direct and indirect jobs for wind as opposed to 14,000 in lignite. Now the lignite jobs are, and we all know this, the 3 coal producing counties are the highest per capita in the state of North Dakota. They're the best paying jobs we've got in the state. We can't really afford to lose those.
Total revenues provided by the lignite industry. Now, these are numbers from an NDSU study on wind and coal. $130 million for lignite, 7.7 for wind. Now, keep in mind that the rated capacity of wind was 3,200 as opposed to 4,000 for coal. So 80% of the rated capacity and 1/26th the generation of revenues to the state. That's not only the state, but that's the state and counties and the local taxing districts. So I just want you to keep those numbers in mind. They're easily found, and I can provide them to you if you'd like. So thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Sir, I would definitely like you to provide those numbers because I can't write them down.
Absolutely. I've got it all. I'll get it to you.
Please send it to our county courthouse.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your time
County
today.
Auditor, Mercer County Courthouse.
And I appreciate your interest in doing the right thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Young lady in the back. I'm sorry I don't know your name. I apologize. I'll know it pretty quick. She'll tell you.
Anna Novak.
Hi, Anna.
Hello.
You should know.
I live at 1139 Elbow Woods Drive in Hazen. My husband and I, we have 4 boys. Adam is 11, Judah is 8, Simon is 5, and Gabriel is 3. I'd like to start off by thank you guys all for your time today, most specifically the commissioners. And I want to say that you guys made the right move by passing the 2-year moratorium during the May meeting. While you guys obviously need some time to evaluate the pros and the cons of additional wind projects in our county, I feel like it's pretty obvious that more people in Mercer County benefit from the coal industry than those that would and do benefit from subsidies by putting wind turbines on their land. And that is what this all boils down to today, what is best for the majority. I could give you guys a lot of facts and figures about what coal does for Mercer County and North Dakota residents. Figures like the $10,000 that our schools stand to lose for each and every student that leaves because their parents can't find work here anymore. Or that over 10% of the money generated in North Dakota on a yearly basis comes from coal. But I'll let others talk to you about that. Obviously, we've had a few people that have given you some figures. I'm here because I've spent the vast majority of my life in Mercer County. 28 of my 38 years have been spent here. When my parents brought me home from the hospital after I was born, they brought me to the same house in Pick City that I lived in until I graduated from high school. My parents still live in that house. My dad was a coal miner. He actually worked at the Glen Harold mine, which is just a few miles from here. My brother was a coal miner, and my husband is a coal miner. When I graduated from high school, I went to college at the University of Marion Bismarck, and after I finished up there, I met and married my wonderful husband, and we started a family. After a few years, he got a job at the Coteau mine by Beulah, and we could have done what a lot of people do, and he could have commuted back and forth. He could have commuted back and forth every day. I'm not going to judge anybody who chooses to do that, but it just wasn't for us. Why? Because I love Mercer County. And I wanted my kids to have the same kind of childhood that I had. Things are a little bit slower and a little bit more innocent here, in my opinion. I like that my kids can ride their bikes to and from the swimming pool, to baseball practice, to school. I like that I personally know all of my children's friends' parents. I feed more mouths than my family most nights of the week, and I love that I know each child in the Sunday school class that I teach. I know them all by name. We are a tight-knit community, and you guys all know that because you guys live here. I'm technically a licensed financial advisor, but I currently assist 2 great advisors. Our office does financial and retirement planning, and we have a location in Bismarck and also in Beulah, which is where I work from. But if the lignite industry is taken down, I know that I will also lose my job because nobody will have money to invest or be able to retire when our community is economically devastated. And that will be the same story told by every business in our community. There'll probably be 1 bar and 1 church left. The last few days, I've been going around collecting signatures for the letter that you guys saw, that Mark read. And I spoke with people in an effort just to get more knowledge. And there's definitely optimism here, but there's also fear. People are scared that they're going to lose their jobs and that Hazen and Beulah will become ghost towns. My 11-year-old, Adam, he's smart and he's a great listener. In fact, he listens when we don't even want him to sometimes, or when we think that he isn't listening. But one of his favorite friends' dad works at Great River Energy, And at this time, he's supposed to lose his job in 2 years. He cried when he found out what's happening with Great River and Falkirk, because he knows that that friend and many others might have to move away, and that we might too. Adam is pretty shy, but he was out helping me get signatures, saying, "Hey Mom, have you asked this person or that person?" Or even walking door to door with me. I'm proud of him because he helped me, but that also kind of makes me sad, because I know the fear that the grown-ups are feeling is also felt by the kids as well, no matter how much we try to shield them from our big people problems. Now, I personally know some of the people asking the board to lift the moratorium. I saw a list on Friday. The ones that I know are good people, and I have no hard feelings towards them. I understand their position. I empathize. But I couldn't help but notice that the majority of the people on that list don't even live here. The list that I saw had 58, and I hear that there were 59. But of the 58 landowners that submitted the letter as of Friday, 35 do not live in Mercer County. 17 don't even live in North Dakota. And honestly, that is what is wrong with politics. You get people who don't live here trying to tell us what we should do. There's a group called North Dakotans for Comprehensive Energy, and they have been funding all kinds of pro-wind marketing in the Bismarck Tribune and other publications. When I first saw one of the ads, my impression was that this group, they're do-gooders. It's a group of concerned citizens that live somewhere in our state. But it's actually a group out of Delaware. I'm pretty sure that they have absolutely no clue about anything to do with our state, and more specifically, our county. And I would be surprised if any of them have even visited our great state. When I watch the national news and I hear on a liberal media outlet that we're evolving past coal and there are cheaper forms of energy out there, I get frustrated. I mean, honestly, I could understand that if it were true, but it just isn't. Here's an analogy for you. Years ago, when you would see the New York City streets in person or on TV, you would mostly see a sea of yellow taxi cabs, because that's how most everybody got around out there. But now things look different. Yes, there are still cabs in the streets, but a lot of people are using things like Uber to get around, and it has taken a toll on the taxi cab industry. Now that is an example of an industry evolving. Wind versus coal isn't like that though, because the government is basically using our tax dollars to fund the entire wind industry. And that is wrong on so many levels, but it's an extra kick in the pants for those of us that feel like we're paying to have the jobs in our community taken away. I could rant about that, but I won't, because the situation before us today isn't about coal versus wind. It's about my county commissioners that I voted in doing what is best for the majority of the people who live in my county. And that's exactly what you did in May when you voted for the 2-year moratorium. Thank you for listening to your constituents in Mercer County, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Anna. Are there any more speakers? Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Jeff Seaman, Executive Director of the Western Dakota Energy Association. And like Ladd Erickson, I'm really kind of testifying as a neutral party, but I want to share some information with you. You've heard some economic statistics from Beaver Brinkman there. And I should also let you know, the Coal Conversion Counties Association is part of the Western Dakota Energy Association as well. John Phillips is one of our board members. I just really wanted to provide some information about the tax that is paid by the respective industries that we're talking about here, coal versus wind. And again, it's not coal versus wind, it's coal and wind. They both contribute to the state's economy. I'm going to provide a handout here.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
The first one I'm distributing there is a document from Legislative Council. It's just the 2019-21, the current biennium anticipated revenue and the revenue distribution, the way coal conversion and coal severance taxes are distributed. You can see there over the 2019-21 biennium, coal severance and conversion taxes are projected to generate about $75.7 million in the 2-year period. I've got another handout here I'm going to pass around just to show some examples. just jumped on the state treasurer's website that shows actual distributions to the entities. And the coal conversion and severance taxes are distributed among the cities, counties, and school districts in Mercer County. And, you know, you can just see by the first table there that I provided, so far to date, and this is the first 6 months of the year, Mercer County, the county of Mercer has received just under $1 million from severance and conversion taxes through June of this year. The city of Beulah has received roughly $440,000 in revenue through the first 6 months. And then I picked the Hazen School District. It's also just over $400,000 in revenue for the first 6 months of the year. My final handout will show you how wind tax happens in North Dakota. This is information obtained from the state tax department. Wind taxation, the way it happens in North Dakota is a bit complicated yet because there's multiple different methods really in place right now. Some of the wind farms are still paying property tax, ad valorem taxes, while others are under a new formula that combines fees on their generating capacity and then the actual number of kilowatt hours that are generated by a given wind farm. You can see by the totals there, if you add them all up, all the wind farms in North Dakota combined generated just over $10 million in tax revenue in calendar year 2019. So over a biennium, you know, you can project that to $20 million. So the wind industry is paying about $20 million in taxes versus coal severance and coal conversion taxes of about $76 million. You can see the difference there. And I just kind of wanted to walk through a little math with you, and I'll be subject to correction if I'm wrong here, but the Garrison Butte wind farm that's proposed in their application said would have a capacity of up to 165 megawatts. And if you do the way the taxes are imposed on a wind farm these days, they pay $2.50 per kilowatt of their rated capacity. So if you would do the math on a 165 megawatt wind farm, that means that wind farm would pay $412,000 in taxes on its capacity. Now it also pays a 0.05 mil on its generation. If we make some assumptions here, a 40% capacity factor for a 165 megawatt wind farm could generate in the neighborhood of 575,000 kilowatt hours per year. And if we do a little bit more math on that, that would mean that they would have to pay about $288,000 in taxes on the actual generation that they produce. So net, round figures, that wind farm would pay total about $700,000 a year in taxes. If it's completed after the year 2020, the end of the year 2020, which is likely, the state is now going to collect 1/3 of that tax. So Mercer County's net, which again would be distributed among cities, counties, school districts in the county, around $460,000. That would be the total tax paid by the wind farm. And again, I'll stand to be corrected if any of those figures aren't right, because they're just kind of ballpark estimates based on, like I said, a 40% capacity factor of a wind farm. Some, I think, maybe do better than that nowadays with more modern technology. But just to give you a few economic facts, that's all I wanted to provide.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Something Ladd had touched on about the grid. If the plant closes entirely over there, how does that affect the grid and wind getting on it?
I'm sorry, what was the?
You had mentioned, it seems to me the last meeting, you had mentioned about quality and quantity in the grid and all of that.
I understand.
So can you explain how the plant over there affects over here for the wind?
Well, I spoke at the Coal Conversion Counties Association meeting last week and just mentioned that and this goes kind of into the physics that Ladd was talking about.
Right.
That, you know, the people who operate the grid, MISO or SPP, are challenged to balance supply and demand constantly. I mean, electricity is the one commodity probably that is delivered instantly. I mean, the minute it's produced, it's consumed. I mean, that's just, it travels at the speed of light, obviously. So when you have intermittent sources, you're forced to juggle things around, and coal plants aren't meant to go up and down. Gas plants can respond better, but that's what, Ladd is referring to, is that the more intermittent resources, the more variable. Even, when a wind turbine is blowing, it's intermittent. It's not a constant voltage coming out of that wind turbine. So, the engineers, the electrical engineers that manage the grid are challenged to maintain that integrity, and a constant voltage in today's electronic society is very important. Blackouts, brownouts are not good things to happen. I'm not really an expert on that, Ms. Binder, but that's my best understanding of how it works.
Good. Are there any other speakers in favor of the moratorium that have some new information? Any other speakers that have some new information that are in favor of the moratorium? I have one question that I want to ask Jessica, and it's because she has more experience. I've only been a commissioner for a short time. You referred to some other prior projects that occurred right here in Mercer County, and would you like to expound on those comments about how successful they were or were not?
Sure, and Wayne and Dwayne probably can help a little. I think you guys are on it. Elite is the project that's on the south side of the county that also incorporates into, I think, Morton, Oliver, we are only up and running one down there. They had come in initially and got the approval in conjunction with the other counties as they were doing that project, but the permit under the 4-year mark that we had actually did expire. And with that, because there was no extension or request to extend, so they had to come back in and reapply. So that was the first one I was referring to, where there was a lull, I guess you could say, in the development and the time frame from when we approved it until it was actually up and functioning then, which was after that second application. The other one I referred to, I believe it started, it was the Antelope Valley project out on the north end of the county there. And it started with Infinity, I believe.
Yes.
Cindy back there, Infinity, Dwayne, right?
Right.
Ultimately, Mcdermott took it over. But in the course of that 4-year time frame, nothing had been accomplished, and they came in December, just this last year. Then you were all there for that one, requesting extension of that, and it was denied because there had been no progress at that area, which was on the north side of the county. So those are the two specific, yep.
Okay. I'm gonna ask one more time, is there any other speakers for the moratorium? There being no further speakers for the moratorium, this hearing is now closed to public comment. I would like to ask the commissioners if they would entertain a motion that further discussion in this moratorium be tabled for our next commission meeting.
I will make that motion, Chairman Schwer.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? I want to add a comment that after hearing all the testimony today, which is all good, that I feel I needed more time to process all this information, and making a decision today would be unfair to everybody here.
Well, Mr. Chairman, to that end, I want everybody in the room to know the statute requires the next action, formal action, be at the regular meeting, so.
Okay, so we're in the
You
right
can't-
track.
I would have stopped you if you'd have tried, okay.
Okay. Once in a while you stumble and do the right thing, huh? Okay, so anyhow, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Dwight, how do you vote?
Aye.
Dwayne?
Aye.
Merle? Aye. Wayne?
I'll vote aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passed. This meeting is adjourned. Oh, I want to thank everybody, everyone for coming.
Almost got it in. That's good.